Hello, and welcome to the Finding the Unicorn in You podcast. I'm Dr. Jaime G. Raygoza, a life coach, psychologist, and your host. Join me on a journey to inspire and transform ordinary lives into something special. Here, we celebrate the unicorns, those who choose not to follow the ordinary conventional path, but rather chase after their dreams and choose the path less taken, making them truly unique. Together, we'll explore powerful life coaching techniques and hear from special guests who embody the spirit of unicorns in their own way. What are we waiting for? Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finding the Unicorn in You. Today, I have a person who grew up in Melbourne, Australia. She is a writer who centers her work around relatable characters dealing with real-life issues and is an advocate for mental health and sexual wellness. She has been on the cover of Harper's Bazaar, Gracie, In Style, FHM, and Playboy to discuss her books. I'm really excited to have her on here, so I'll let her talk a little bit more about herself. So without further ado, I have Liv Arnold.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Jamie. So, as you just mentioned in the intro, so I'm a romance author and I've written 3 books. So, Law and Disorder, Etched in Stone, and Stepping Stone. I like writing relatable characters that people can see part of themselves in or maybe someone else in. I've always had anxiety, so I have a lot of mental health themes in my book. So because people go through it at some point in their lives. So I think a lot of people can relate to it.
That's amazing. And did you always want to be an author, or is it something that kind of came through as you went through life?
So since I was young, I've always wanted to be an author. So I used to write short stories a lot as a kid, but I thought it was a faraway dream. So I didn't think it was possible to make any money out of it or have a career or even get a book publishing deal. So after uni, so I didn't even study a course to do writing at university. And after uni, I went to work at a Big Four bank so it's a very dry type role, like in risk and compliance. And because I just thought I'll just do a safe type job that I guess it's more secure and just progress up the corporate ladder. But my parents, they said they always enjoyed the more creative process. My mum suggested that I do a short creative writing course that's outside of work hours, and so it's once or twice a week that goes for about a few months and see how I go with that. When I did that course, it was really good to connect with like-minded people. And after speaking to the teacher, she made me realize that it was possible to get either a book publishing contract or to be able to self-publish a book successfully. And she said she did the same course when she started many years ago. And out of the people that did go on to become an author, it's the people that kept persisting. So it's not necessarily the most talented or technically great writers there. It's the people that takes on the feedback and I guess even though there's a lot of rejections that comes into writing, that still keeps going anyway. Yes, that's when I decided to take writing a bit more seriously.
That's amazing. And what a intense story. I know that it's true. It doesn't always be the most talented person or the least talented. It's just how often do you show up and are you willing to be flexible?
There's a lot of rejections when it comes to writing or any sort of creative profession. So when I was querying my manuscripts to publishers, I was getting a lot of rejections, and a lot of the times they don't even reply back to you, but others, they might just give you a quick no. But I had a few more detailed rejections. So some of it was pages long about what they didn't like about the manuscript. So it's about taking that feedback on board, what resonates with me, and just continuing with it, because what someone doesn't like, someone else might.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And with all those rejections that you were getting and the feedback, what kept you going? I know a lot of us will sometimes have that little imposter syndrome creep in and we're like, am I really that good enough? I keep getting these no's. So what motivated you to keep going and go through that whole process?
Yeah, I still have imposter syndrome. I always find it weird if I call myself an author or a writer, or even if I've been in magazines or articles talking about my books or my writing, I still think I'm not a writer. So I think no matter what stage you're in, a lot of people do get that imposter syndrome. But I was reading an article with Stephen King, And he got a lot of rejections when he started, like most writers. And he said that instead of taking the rejection letters to heart, he sees it as a badge of honor, and he hung it up on in a room where he did his writing, because with every no and with every rejection, it means that he is putting himself out there and he is progressing. There's that saying that if you're not failing in something, you're not trying hard enough.
Yes, I love that. And I have to agree with you. Even with myself, I still have imposter syndrome to this
Yeah.
day. I got my doctorate, and whenever anybody calls me doctor, I'm just like, who are you talking about? Oh, me.
Yeah,
So
I know. And yeah, but you've earned that title. You spent so many years like earning that title. So yeah, so I think a lot of people get imposter syndrome.
yeah, it doesn't matter what age you are, it doesn't matter where you are
Yeah,
in life. It just creeps in, and we have to learn
yeah,
how to fight it. Like you said, just keep showing up and wear it as a badge of honor.
yeah, I think so. And yeah, in magazines, when people call me an author, I'm like looking over my shoulder. I'm thinking, oh, this isn't me.
No, yeah, but you definitely are, and you've come out in quite a few magazines. So,
Yeah.
and they're from different publishers and different like topics. So, how did you get started with that?
So I have a marketing in, I'm sorry, I have a background in PR and marketing. So I've had it in a lot of previous day jobs, and there's so many authors out there. So I was thinking, what is my niche to make me stand out with among other authors? Because I'm traditionally published with my books, but a lot of publishers, they expect you to do your own marketing. So when I was like looking at the marketing plan for my books, and I was thinking, what can I do to make my book stand out and to make me stand out for my own personal branding? And so I thought of a few different things. So one of them is anxiety, because I've always had anxiety since I was a kid. And a lot of people seem to find that relatable when reading my books. So I was pitching that as an angle to a lot of media outlets. And another one is there's this stereotype that a lot of authors, especially romance authors, they're this desperate housewives, middle-aged, grumpy woman. And I thought maybe I should go against that stereotype, because you don't really see authors on the cover or of magazines. Like, it's more reserved for something like actors, singers, sports players, or even presenters. But then I just thought, if actors and singers can be all rock and roll on the cover of magazines, so can authors. So yeah, so these were the two things I thought, this is my niche. I'll concentrate on these two things, because so many people are writing books these days, especially with how easy it is to self-publish. So that's how I pitched myself to make myself stand out and to media, and that's how I was getting these media coverages and articles, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I think it's a very
Yeah.
innovative way of putting yourself out there. And
Mm.
I know you mentioned anxiety, which I do want to dive into there.
Yes.
What? So you said you struggle with this since you were young.
Yes.
So what are some things that you first noticed, oh, this might be an issue? Did you have at a young age education on anxiety, or something that you first felt it and then learned about it after?
No, so back when I was younger, like at school, school wasn't really saying anything about anxiety or depression, even though I don't think I've ever had depression, but it wasn't really something that was talked about. So I didn't actually know I had anxiety for a long time, until maybe about 8 years ago, when, because since I was young, I would be worried about very small things that would never happen. And it would be until all hours of the night, until my alarm went off and I had to go to school. But I had no idea that was anxiety. I just thought I was just worrying over nothing. And so about 8 years ago, so my husband, he said to me, I think you might have anxiety, because I'll be keeping him awake until all hours of the night about my thought process that was spiraling into things that sounded so ridiculous. And he said, I think maybe you should see a doctor, because this isn't normal to be talking around and around in circles until all hours of the night, until the alarm went off. And then I had to go to work and I would have 0 hours sleep, and I would have to go to work and just push through it. And so he said, you should see a doctor, because I think you've got something. So I saw a GP and he said, I've got severe anxiety. And and he suggested I start on low dosage anxiety medication to help manage it.
Wow. Yeah. I can only imagine how hard that was growing up and not knowing that this is something
Yeah.
that you weren't, that is not normal. And you could have easily gotten the help a lot sooner. How does it feel getting diagnosed later in life and knowing like what you had when younger?
I guess later in life, I guess like it with later in life, I've been experimenting with different things to help me manage anxiety. I guess if I was younger, I would have been able to look at different options a bit sooner. But then again, I guess 20, 30 years ago, people weren't really talking about mental health challenges as much. So it might not have helped much anyway. So I have went through a lot of different options to help me manage it. And it wasn't the medication that's helped or even cognitive behavior therapy. It was more things to challenge myself physically because it links up mentally.
That makes sense. Yeah. And the good thing is that you did get diagnosed. You know what you have now, and now you have all the
Yeah.
tools to help you manage it so you don't continue going with that. I personally, I have
Yes.
severe anxiety myself. So I
Yeah.
completely get what you're going through. I would suffer from anxiety attacks. So I don't know if that's something that you also went through.
Yes, I did. And I'm not sure if it's the same with you, but it can be difficult for the people closest around you. So my husband says when I'm having one of my anxiety episodes, supporting me is like a full-time job. Like listening to me talk in spirals. And sometimes when I'm talking to my brothers, I'm talking around and around in circles. I can tell that they're getting really frustrated with me.
No, yes, it's completely like that. I start
Yeah.
going through a spiral and my brain starts moving so fast. I can barely keep up with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like what you're saying makes no sense.
Yeah. Sometimes eventually, like the conclusion I've come to is someone has died and doesn't even make any sense. It's how I came to that conclusion.
Oh yeah, and I'll start having like a weird
Yeah.
thing. This person's gonna hate me because I forgot to pick up their coat or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that a lot. Like part of anxiety is I always worry that someone's mad at me or someone hates me.
Do you feel that this has to do something with like people pleasing?
Yeah.
That that kind of
I'm a
like
big people
involves-
pleaser. I'm a big people pleaser, and that's something that I've been trying to manage, being able to know how to set boundaries, which is something I've always had trouble with, like saying no.
Oh, same here. I'm a big people pleaser as well, and that's something that I've been trying to learn
Yeah.
co- to work around. So I do feel that some of the anxiety, a portion of the anxiety, if not most, comes from that when like a situation with the person comes in, and that's when you start spiraling.
Yeah. So I find that's when most of my anxiety attacks come. So it usually is linked up to not, it's usually links to an interaction I've had with someone. Yeah. So it could be something as small as in my head, I think they looked at me funny and I
Yeah.
think, oh, what have I done for them to be annoyed with me? But it could be another thing. So I find people, they, in general, I don't know, because I think people can sense anxiety or people pleasing in someone. So
Mm.
I find I get people that does try to push my boundaries a lot. And that is something that I'm trying to draw a line to.
I completely get it. And just to
Yeah.
give you an example of what I went through that was similar to that. A
Yeah.
few months ago, if not a year ago,
Yeah.
I had a new boss, and
Okay.
she's very sweet. However, she's very to the point and will answer things right away. And she would answer like messages like, "Okay, thanks." Very short, will not try conversation. So I read it into my head that wow, she hates me. She does not
Oh,
want to entertain a conversation with me. She just wants to push me away. And I started making this own narrative in my head because
yeah.
everybody else would talk to me and answer phone calls and have this big dialogue in email, but she would just be like, no, yes, okay, whatever. And
Yeah.
I talked to her and it had nothing to do with that. So it's just like we do create our own narrative. That anxiety just,
Yeah.
it's like a little, I think of the little angel and the little devil on your shoulder that just
Yeah.
keeps you going in this negative spiral.
Yeah. And sometimes like even something like, oh, this person didn't put a smiley face at the end of their email or message. That's like something that makes me overread into things.
Completely. Yes,
Yeah.
completely. And I agree with that. For any listeners that might be going through this issue, is there any advice that you would give them to lessen the stress load?
Yeah. So I have come off any anxiety medication about 6 months ago because I found that it was nothing more than placebo effect. So I thought, I don't think this is helping. Like, why am I taking something that I'm not 100% convinced that it helps? So I came off it about 6 months ago with the doctor's guidance, just so that I won't have any withdrawal symptoms. And I've tried cognitive behavior therapy, so therapy and seeing a psychologist, but I came to the conclusion that talking is overrated. I found that when speaking in therapy sessions, it made me stuck in the same loop like every week when I saw them. I know that therapy does help some people, but it didn't help me. So I stopped doing that as well. And so I started to do things like the Wim Hof method, where it's a 10-week program. So he's a guy from Iceland, and he I did his program every week for 10 weeks, and it was things like breathing exercises into pressure points in your body. And also, he promotes cold showers and cold baths. So it starts off very light. So 15 to 30 seconds cold showers for the first week, but it ended up going to 10 minutes at the end of the 10-week program. And while I was doing the cold showers, I found all anxiety goes out the window because I really can't stand the cold. And I just think I can't wait to get out of this cold shower. So I found challenging myself physically and being in that cold, harsh shower, like that has helped me build a bit more mental resilience.
I love that. And I have read studies on this where if you're
Yeah.
feeling like you're having an anxiety attack or you're about to, or your mind is just spiraling, go put your hands under ice cold water, like running
Yeah.
water, to shock your body because it'll take the pain
Yeah.
from here to here.
Yeah.
It'll
So
just
it resets your thinking a bit. And I found that helps. And since about July and August, I started doing martial arts. So I do jujitsu and Muay Thai, and I find that does, like, learning something new, it does help me with mental resilience. And they're both doing different things for self-defense. So with Muay Thai, it's a lot of striking and kicking. And throughout that time, I'm just concentrating on not getting punched in the face. So there's no room for other anxiety. And with jujitsu, you, you, you learn the takedowns and also chokehold. And so when I'm getting choked by someone, I'm not really thinking about stupid stuff that usually goes on in the back of my mind.
No, yeah, I completely
Yeah.
agree. And I do want to highlight something that you said earlier, that you tried like therapy, you tried medicine and didn't work for you. And just because it works for someone else doesn't mean
Yeah.
it not always work for you. You have to find your method, listen to your body and find techniques that is best going to be
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, I think so. Because at first I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll just have to have anxiety for the rest of my life. And with medication, maybe I'll just have to be on this medication forever. But then I tried this for years and it didn't help. So that was when I thought maybe I need to try other things.
Yeah, I love that. And it really, you have to look out for as many options as you have and then try them
Yeah.
out. 'Cause you're not going to know what works until you actually try it.
Yeah. And I find the body is very much connected to the mind. So yeah, that's what I enjoy the most about it. And partly I was starting to do martial arts to gain a bit more confidence as well, and hopefully be able to set boundaries down the track.
I completely love that. Now, I
Yeah.
want to segue a little bit to the second half that you said you focus on.
Yeah.
It's mental health and sexual awareness, which
Mm.
can be on two different ends of the spectrum.
Yes. Yeah.
So, what made you want to focus on that as well?
Yeah, because with romance books, there is a lot of there is sex scenes in my books, and also other authors do write sex scenes as well. And with a lot of romance books, unless it's 100% yes before getting intimate or having sex, it's a no. And so I think a lot of romance books, they do promote it has to be 100% enthusiastic consent. And I think that draws parallels to in person. So if someone doesn't seem enthusiastic either by their words or their actions, it's a no. And I think when I first started writing romance books, a lot of people would laugh about romance books because they'll think it's a less than genre compared to other genres, or they'll think that, or they'll laugh at the sex scenes because they think it's so like ridiculous. But but I wanted to talk about that a bit more because sex is human nature. And whenever, say, a thriller writer or a horror writer, they write about someone getting brutally murdered with a chainsaw or something, no one really blinks an eyelid. But whenever, for like romance books, suddenly people become giggling teenagers. And so I wanted to address that a bit more with a lot of my interviews, that it is human nature and people shouldn't be ashamed to discuss what they really want, even though it's taboo by society.
I completely agree. And the more you talk about it, like
Yeah.
knowledge never hurts. So
Yeah.
it's good to show people like this is not a bad thing. It's something that is natural, and everybody goes
Yeah.
through these urges. The more we talk about it, the less taboo it gets.
Yeah. And so I do provide sex advice to Cosmopolitan and other magazines, which I find a lot of fun. And it's a lot of fun with educating myself as well, because sometimes if I ask to provide a comment about a particular sex position, so one time it was about the pinball wizard, and asking it, what the hell is that? I don't even know what this is. So
Yeah.
I Googled it, and then I was looking at the pictures, and I was thinking, well, this just defies all gravity. So people come up with strange things sometimes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've had very unique conversations about topics, and I'm like, oh, okay. More power to you. Whatever you like.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it never hurts to learn more and to educate yourself more on different topics, even if it's a topic that might not be comfortable at the beginning. At the beginning, when I was writing romance books and sex scenes did come up, I would be so embarrassed, and I think I still am a little bit now. But but yeah, just through learning more about why society might frown upon it or look down upon it, it's usually comes from the individual's person's more preconceived notions or their upbringing.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And just because your parents didn't talk about it doesn't mean that you should continue that trend.
Yeah.
Keep it taboo. Really try to just normalize it, because one of the
Yeah.
big things I notice in my friends is that they have problems in the intimacy part with the relationships, but they won't talk about it because they're like, we just deal with it. And I was like, no, don't deal with it. Talk about it. Try to figure out what the problem is and fix it.
Yeah. And I think, like, with a lot of romance books, there is a lot of talking involved with the character to make until they come, like they grow as individuals and as a couple by the end of the book. And I think that's important in real life as well, no matter what stage you are in the relationship, whether it's you're first starting to date or you've been with someone for a very long time. So in my book, Stepping Stone, the two main characters, they've separated after about 10 years of marriage, and they've come back together after growing separately and together. And they did talk and they did experiment with new things together. And I think in person as a couple, yeah, to never stop experimenting with new things, just as long as you discuss it in a respectful way.
I completely agree. And I love
Yeah.
that you're teaching people these concepts within a narrative of fantasy and different
Yeah.
ways. It's just a creative way to actually to hide in the lessons, I think. Because
Yeah.
if you tell somebody, here's this book on things you should know in life, they're probably, or you're like, here's this
Yeah.
very exciting book with all this drama, you're probably going to read the other one. So,
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
yeah. So I
And
can,
yeah, just to try different things. Yeah, it's never too late, no matter what age you're in and what stage of the relationship you're in, whether you've got kids and been together for decades.
yeah. So we've talked a lot about your books, but we haven't really
Yeah.
talked about what the books are about. Just
Yes.
is there very, how many, first of all, how many books have you written? And then second of all, is there any, are they all independent or are they all part of a series?
I've written three books. So the first book, Law and Disorder, a shorter book, that's an enemies to lovers type romance, and it's based. So the couple, so the main two people, they're neighbors, and that's a standalone book. And I'm not sure if you have the TV show called Neighbors in the States where you are at, but I used to grow up watching the TV show Neighbors, where they're very involved in each other's lives. So they know everything about each other, when in real life, I don't even know my neighbors' names or who even lives next door to me. And I think that's the same with a lot of people. So I thought it'd be fun to be in a set a setting where everyone really knows each other, and to have that based have that streak based in that relationship, based on the relationships. But then my other books, Etched in Stone, Stepping Stone, they're both stand alone, but they're part of the same series. So my Invested in You series, I'm aiming for 3 books. So I'm currently writing my 3rd book, and each book is based in an investment firm, and it's based on a team of 3 different women, and they work in an IT and data analytics team together. So each book is based on a different female team member, from that group. So it's all set in the same universe.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So they're different stories, but within
Yeah.
the same like location, universe. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yes. Yeah.
So the different
Yeah.
perspective of the person.
Yeah. Different perspectives. So they have their own relationships, and whoever was the main character for the first book and the second book, with each book, they become more secondary characters. So they pop up in each book.
That's a very innovative like method
Yeah.
of writing. I love that.
Yeah, and I thought it'd be pretty cool to write about female characters that's in a IT or data analytics environment, because you don't really see that many women in that sort of industry. And an author that I've always looked up to, Meredith Wild, she wrote an erotic romance series based like a workplace type romance as well. And she used to be a CEO of an IT company. And I thought, oh, that's a bit different. And when she wrote her books, it was all about hacking and stuff like that. And I thought, this is so interesting, like a female that's had this IT background and wrote these books where you could tell that she's got knowledge about how hacking would work and what it would look like.
I love that. And yeah, you really don't see a lot of that, especially for women protagonists to be in that field. So I think that's amazing that you're doing that.
Yeah, and it still has the happily ever after with a lot of romance books. So in Etched in Stone, it's a first love type romance, where it's a billionaire romance. But then the second book, Stepping Stone, is a second chance romance with the estranged couple coming back together. But in the third book, aiming for it to come around in a circle, because in the first book it was a billionaire male employee with a employer with a female employee. But when it comes to the third book, the main female character will be the manager is the manager of the team, and she hires a male employee. So it'll come around in a circle, because usually it's more the other way around, where you hear about the billionaires or the higher up male person, like in the romance.
That sounds very interesting. I have not read them yet, but you definitely got me intrigued. So you'll probably see a few people like be seeing the book and reading it. So I'll probably bring it into a book club.
I hope so, because I think even though it does have mental health challenges in the books, or like sexual wellness things, it does have it's a lot of fun. So there's a lot of laugh out loud moments, I think, from what I've been told from reviewers. And some of it has come from inspiration from my own life, because there's this one scene in Etched in Stone where I remember I read all my reviews. I know people shouldn't do that, but I read them, the bad reviews. And there were some reviews saying, oh, this one scene, it's so unrealistic. It'll never happen in real life. So the main female character, she gets into a car accident because she was looking at a billboard of food, and the person that she hit, that person can't start their car anymore. So the main character, she calls the police for traffic control. But then when the police came, they gave her a fine for reckless driving. So she called the police on herself. And that actually happened to me.
Oh my gosh.
I crashed into someone because I was looking on the billboard of a hamburger. And then I called the police on myself, and they gave me 2 fines for reckless driving.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And reviewers were saying that'll never happen in real life, but it did.
You go show, you just can't really judge, because anything could happen, really. If you can imagine it,
Yeah.
it probably can happen.
But yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Now we're getting to the point of the interview where we're going to be going to the last question. We're the last section of the podcast where we're going to talk about unicorns. For me, a unicorn is an individual that is authentic. They are themselves. They believe in themselves, and they live their life in their own path. They're unique individuals. So they're not going to copy anybody else, and they're just going to be them. So
Yeah.
you're a unicorn. in yourself and being able to do all of this, and you're still like, you're living your life and you're writing your own path. What advice do you have for any listener where they can start being that unicorn and believing in themselves?
I guess don't let other people tell you that you can't do something. A lot of my friends, they weren't necessarily supportive when I started writing. They were like, "No, you'll never get a book publishing contract or you'll never make any money from it." And there's that saying that people don't want to be part of your progress. They only want to be part of your success. And yeah, so that's the only thing that I can give advice to that personally from me is don't let someone tell you that you can't do something because a lot of it is from their own insecurities or I'm not sure if it's a thing in the States, but tall poppy syndrome is a big thing in Australia where they don't imagine tall poppies and people want to cut you down before you keep growing. So
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a similar saying in the States, but it's a big thing in Australia for people. Since Australia, it's more a laid back type culture. If people start seeing someone achieve something, they might get a bit threatened or, yeah. And also don't make yourself be smaller for other people to feel better.
I love that. I completely
Yeah.
love. We have a similar saying, but they call it the crab effect.
Oh,
Where
okay.
yeah, so
Yeah.
if you put like a bunch of crabs in a bucket, they won't let each other escape. They keep pulling each other
Oh,
down.
yeah. I've never heard of that saying.
Yeah, so I guess to fishermen, they tested it out with like different crabs, and if you put one crab, they can easily escape. But
Yeah.
once you put two or three, then if they see one leaving, they actually pulled them down.
Oh,
If I can't escape, you can't either. They never put lids in their crab buckets. They just keep putting crabs in there, and the more crabs there's in there, the less chance they're going to get out.
oh, that's really sad.
I know. It's a pretty sad phenomenon, but it's kind of applied in society that if sometimes you're in a location with individuals that aren't in your best interests, and
Yeah.
they are, like you said, envious or they don't like that you're getting bigger than them, they might just pull you down to be back at their level. So like of a
Yeah.
self-sabotage.
Yeah. Oh, that's really sad for crabs that they don't work together to make themselves taller to get out the bucket.
You would think so, but yeah, that's
Yeah, they could actually stack themselves.
mhm. Yeah, it's a very sad phenomenon. But
Yeah.
this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you once
Thank
again for being on here. My last question for you, if somebody wants to buy your book or just get in contact with you for any reason, how can they do so?
Yeah, so I love hearing from people. So people can contact me through livarnold.com. That's my website. I'm pretty slack with update my website though sometimes. Or they can find me on my socials. So LIV_AU, which is Instagram and Twitter or X. I'm not used to calling it X at all. Um, or they can find me on Facebook, Liv Arnold Author, or they can get my books on all major online retailers like Barnes& Noble, iTunes, Amazon, Kobo. So all that good stuff.
Perfect. Any last words of advice before we close out today?
Yeah, just find what's best for you. So I've experimented with a lot of different things with mental health challenges. As I mentioned before, the traditional things never worked for me, like medication and therapy, which is straight away what doctors want to get you on. Yeah, when it comes to mental health challenges, or even if you want to achieve something in your career, something that works for someone might be different for you. So don't be afraid to look at something outside of the box, and that might help you a lot more.
I completely love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everything. And a quick reminder yeah, no problem. A quick reminder for listeners, episodes come out every Friday at 7 a.m. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. And lastly, if you go to my website at raygoza-consulting.com, go to the Unicorn Wall of Fame, you'll actually see Liv in there with a picture, her website, all of her books, so that you can easily access it as well as in the show notes. But thanks everyone. And thanks Liv again. Appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the Finding the Unicorn in You podcast. I truly appreciate you listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and gained valuable insights. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite platform. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing. Until next time, this is Dr. Jaime G. Raygoza signing off.